I mean, I came in as a reader of poetry and not a poet. Chair of people who were poets, all of the other judges were poets, but I was not. But my idea, which I was very clear about and which Ford was very happy about, was simply that we would read the poems as poems, we'd look at the books as books, and that's it, really. It's not about somebody having had some great career before or after, or me knowing their name or me not knowing their name, or anybody else knowing them personally. It's just about poetry, because that's the thing that will serve poetry best, that's the thing that will serve writing best, it's the thing that gives dignity to all of the writers involved. Obviously, I'm not a poet, but I have been judged as a writer, and my books have been judged. All you really want as a writer is for your words to be read and given attention and to be looked at seriously. And of course it's absurd to put one book next to another book with a completely different voice, a completely different viewpoint, completely different concerns. We're sitting there knowing, yes, to that extent it's absurd, but we can say, of these specific first books, of these specific single poems, of these specific collections by more established people, this is the one that we would say of these, here, read this, because that's all a prize ever is saying, here, read this. If you're only going to read one poetry book this year, then here, this one. Or if you're only going to read the Forward collection, then all of these poems should be in the Forward collection, and then we know that there will be some that you might not like, but loads that you really will, and a few that you'll remember forever, which is the point. It's the point of writing, is that it will be there, it will give you genuine company in your solitude, it will change your life, more or less. And some of this work is potentially profoundly life-changing, depending on your experience and depending where you are in life, and that's joyful. And there's no argument about that. We just wanted to find the best work in any given category, and that's what it was about. And that's tough enough without having any peculiar agenda. That's a lot of serious discussion. But we were having serious discussion about genuine technical details and whether people were doing more or less ambitious things, and if you were failing over a very difficult thing or succeeding with things more simple, and lots of nuance and lots of serious attention, and everything was given enough time, and no phony controversy or weirdness. So it's all very comfortable, and then it's all very amicable as well, because people feel that they've been heard and that the decisions that have been reached make sense and have a good heart to them. Best, I mean, I would say the overarching note would be that for all of the categories, it was very, very tough. Everybody always says that, and I've judged competitions where, you say that, but it's not actually true. In this case, it is actually true. They always say that as well, but genuinely, it was hard. We were very encouraged by the new writing, the people coming up, that they're very strong. Occasionally we were looking at more established people and thinking, well, yeah, they're all right, but they're maybe not really pushing it. Occasionally we were thinking, wow, established people, but they're still going to new places, this is wonderful. We did think in general that poetry editing was not showing itself to be as strong as the poetry writing, and having an exterior eye is very important. And the note that came up most often would have been absolutely extraordinary if there had just been a little bit more editorial input. When we were deciding on the shortlist, this came up over and over and over and over when we were reading a very large number of books. We kept coming up with, please, 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 poetry editors, think about whether somebody's absolutely ready to put an anthology out. Think about whether they can absolutely sustain this. If you just were a bit more patient, if you just gave it a year, or persuaded them to give it a year. Loads more people. You would have made our life even more hideously difficult. But the best individual poem, there were loads of collections that had beautiful individual poems. And it was very nice to be able to include them in the anthology. But the winner was The Mighty Hudson by Claire Harmon. It's just a lovely, lovely, lovely poem. Slightly crazy, very surprising, technically acute. There's one strand of meaning which is to do with this character, but there's also a sort of sense of the river itself, and those two wind together at the end in a very satisfying way. Everybody really loved the way that poem just fitted at the end, really, really properly, and rang in its length. Some nice surprising imagery and experimentation. I did all the things that you really want in a poem, so we were very happy about The Mighty Hudson, which is good, as it's one. The best first collection, we were very excited generally by the first collection shortlist. We were all very pleased by the shortlist. It just contained strong books, and it was then very hard to decide, again, a winner, because the level was just so good. But having said that, we did decide a winner after much discussion. It was very clear that everybody was of quality, and people would say, well, I don't think that probably wouldn't win, but I would like to list blah, 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 blah quality, just to put it on record that all of these things are fine, but maybe that bit's missing, and all of these things are great, but maybe that bit's missing. The winning collection, Small Hands, Manahashi, again, technically, it's doing lots of different things. It's doing very testing things. It's going through a whole range of forms, and there's no sense of that being an automatic thing. Oh, I have to do this now. No, I have to do this. She's just putting herself against lots of different types of writing and doing that organically and naturally, and it being successful. Some lovely imagery, some lovely observation. Again, flights of fancy, and if you just run down the title list, there's some beautiful surprises in the titles. Even that would give you a sense that there's just a very wide range that came through very strongly, and a genuine physicality, physically fully realised poems, a sense not only of the mind and the emotion. Quite a lot of people were successful with emotion, but there's also a sense of physicality and the sense of the voice being in a body was there, and humour, sort of playful sensuality. Sensuality, it's difficult. So she's doing lots of difficult things with success, which made us very happy. So that's why she won. She's very good. And the final winner, really exciting again, very, very strong list, some very strong names, Paul Muldoon, Kieran Carson, people who are really punching. But again, it was kind of, just extraordinarily clear that there would be one winner. Claire Rankin. Her collection, Citizen, it's quite unconventional. You've got prose poetry in there, you've got prose in there, you've got all kinds of different, not borrowings from different media, but poetry sort of reaching out and taking things and forming them into poetry, and it forms in and of itself a kind of very long poem of mosaic effect, and the placing of prose. Given that prose has kind of got a little bit lost in places as well, it's a reassessment of prose as well, because obviously that should have the same crafting level as poetry, and the process certainly does. And I'm not a poet, but it was being described as prose poetry by poets. So that there's a lot going on, and there's a lot going on about a subject that's deeply, deeply individually felt, but deeply, deeply relevant right now. The othering of people making people unpeople, what effect that has to you, what effect that has if you are part of the people who are the group that's saying another group is other. But it's a very inclusive read. If you're not of the group that she's describing from within, you're still allowed to be within. It's very intellectually thought through. It's got more detail than a fair amount of journalism that I've read on the topic. and yet it's got the feeling and the visceral quality as well. But having said that, it's not emotionally manipulative. It's very subtle and calibrated. It's not just somebody screaming at you. But it's a topic that deserves screaming. And this is a kind of very long, articulate cry. And it's very accessible. It's not, when you picked it up, it's if you did poetry at school and haven't met it since. This is not that book. This is a different kind of book that could provoke anything from outrage to joy to tears to a variation on all of those themes if you keep reading. Which is what poetry is meant to do, and it's full of this idea that I'm in a situation that would provoke despair, but I do not myself despair. What I do is I write, and I write this weird, in this little tiny, apparently marginal field, which is poetry. What I choose to do is to go there, to be very articulate and precise about this thing. And there is a belief in the possibility of change. There is a belief in the usefulness of outrage, combined with positive forward motion, which is remarkable politically, and it's remarkable linguistically. It's remarkably within literate writing and literary writing and poetry. All of which you would want to celebrate. So we have So It Won, which is a good thing.